Welcome to Confessions Beyond the Food. I'm your host, Nancy Redlin. Let's dig in and get inspired. Welcome back to Confessions Beyond the Food. In part 2 of my conversation with Michael Wolfe from SEFA, we're talking about what it really means to build a culture of learning. We dive into why learning shouldn't stop after onboarding, how to balance formal training and on-the-job experience, and why creating an environment where people can ask questions and even make mistakes is one of the best investments a leader can make. Let's dig in. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Confessions Beyond the Food. And today I have Michael Wolfe back in the house. Yay.
That's it. You have nobody to blame but yourself for that, Nancy. Yeah, for better or worse, here we are.
Yeah, I like to inflict hard things. Just kidding. So if you didn't watch part 1, definitely go check it out. We talked about why training isn't just about transferring knowledge. Today, we want to go a little step further in how to actually build an organization that learning is part of their culture. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's where we're going to go. So, Michael, what is a culture of learning?
I was going to ask you that when you started talking about how we build an organization where learning is a part of that. As a leader, when you hear that phrase, and I will admit, I haven't listened to all of your previous episodes. So if culture of learning has come up before, that would be helpful too. What does your audience think it means? What do you feel like it means, whether it's at your organization or other organizations? What does that mean to you? And we'll springboard from there.
I think that, I don't think I've ever defined it as a
Yeah.
learning culture.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like, oh, Michael, what do you mean by a culture of learning? Well, what do you mean? I don't know. What do you mean? I mean, this could be a really, really boring podcast if we spend the whole time just volleying back and forth on, well, what do neither of us actually know what it means. So when you said it, what came to mind, or what are some things that you feel like are a part of a culture of learning that we can talk about how to build towards?
I think that, I actually just had training with my team this morning. And one thing we talked about is you're never going to be perfect. And, I would rather you ask questions and be curious than than try to be perfect, because perfection is not going to happen. And over time, training just doesn't happen at W3 from the jump. Like, we are constantly training. We actually do weekly training. And I think that training happens everywhere we go. By asking questions with your customers, and whether it be your customers or product knowledge or how to handle certain situations. These are all teachable moments. And, that's how I view it.
So a couple of things that you said there. I mean, let's maybe break that down a little bit, or think about what we then really mean by a culture of learning. So firstly, you said, okay, we just did some training this morning, but at the same time, just because you're not running a class or a course or someone's taking a module online, that doesn't mean they're not learning, right? So they're learning all the time. So when we talk about a culture of learning, I'm hearing you say, oh, it's not just about these sort of, I don't know, formal moments where someone's taking a course, right? It's an attitude that's pervasive, right? So when we talk about that, is it fair to think about it? I don't know, maybe not as a culture of learning, but more of like a developmental mindset, like that I'm always trying to improve how I do what I do. I'm trying to figure out how to do something new, or I'm doing something a certain way and I could do it better. So when we say culture of learning, are we just talking about continuous? Is it continuous or continual? Continual improvement. Is that what we're talking about here?
I think so.
Okay.
I think
Listen.
developmental is a great word.
Okay. I mean, listen, we started with a question that neither of us really had. We both admitted, I'm not exactly sure. And I mean, I think I think firstly, it's important to start with, what do we mean by that? Because otherwise we could be completely barking up a wrong tree. Like, what are we talking about? Okay. So there's something about a focus on development. And you also talked about the fact that every time you do something, it's an opportunity to learn, right? Because We're naturally trying to get better. We have some goal we're trying to achieve. We're trying to accomplish some task. And depending on how it went, I can, even if it went well, you can probably learn from your success too, right? Well, what did I do that I want to repeat, that I would prefer to remember? Yeah, right. Note to self, the next time I do that, I want to do the same thing. I want to do that again the same way. Or in a certain situation, I've got a plan. I've got something that works. Okay. Then you also, somewhere in there, you also talked about like mistakes. So when we talk about a culture of learning, which we're now talking about sort of something developmentally focused, what does failure have to, when you talk about errors or making mistakes, or failing is too strong of a word. Don't, like, we're not, this is not school where we're getting an F, just making a mistake or doing something in a way that I could have done it better. So when you said that, what does that have to do with learning to you? Why are why
I
did
mean, I
mistakes,
think
why did
it's that
mistakes come
maybe
up?
it's that old adage that, learning from your mistakes,
I don't, I don't, I don't know. I've heard people say learning enters through bleeding wounds. We've all gone to the same school, the school of hard knocks, right? So there's something to the fact that we react to, in particular, to the catastrophic ones, right? So if I asked you what was, name something, whether it was in this life or a past life, and I name something, something that went sideways. In general, people remember that. Like, oh yeah, or if I say, tell me a time when something went wrong in this kind of circumstance, people are able to answer that relatively quickly. Those things stick with you. So now, while we prefer that people not make catastrophic errors on the job, right, because it has an impact on the business, so we'd like that to not happen. It does, and even when we're not making catastrophic errors, we're making tiny little missteps that we can course correct, that we can figure out on the fly. To me, that kind of approach, where we openly admit, you know what, this is going to go wrong. Hopefully not to the point where it does permanent damage that we can't undo. But in some way, shape, or form, this thing that we're about to do as a business, or this task that I'm about to assign you, yep, it's going to go wrong. And what we're going to do is we're going to make that assumption and then adjust from there and learn from there and move forward from there. That to me sounds like a certain mentality. And so does I don't know, does everyone have that mentality? Do the leaders that you've worked for in the past have that mentality? Does everyone in your organization have that mentality? The idea that a developmental mindset, I don't know if it starts with that concept of it's going to go wrong, like we're going to do things that we could always do better. That something that's universal? Do you see it everywhere? I don't. I'm curious what you've seen.
I definitely don't see it everywhere. And that's why one of the big reasons why, I've created a culture that that they're going to make mistakes. Our factories are going to make mistakes. Like, deadlines are going to be missed. You can't live in fear of something going wrong, because lots of things can go wrong. And it is about reacting and jumping on it, and, not being afraid to come to me or any of our other leadership team to solve the problem together. So there's definitely been instances in my life, I think, where I had leadership that was, everything was fear-based. And so the other thing too is, we kind of touched on it before, is like, if you've been in the industry 25 years like I have, my mistakes look really different than somebody that started 2 days ago, that just started in the industry.
We certainly hope so.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, that was, and I also flourished, I think, under several of my bosses that didn't, said, this is going to happen. This has happened to me. This is going to happen to you. And you're going to make mistakes. Just learn from it. And that was one thing that, after I made a couple of mistakes early on in my career, my boss said to me, she said, you know what, Nancy, I don't have to worry about you, because when you make a mistake, you're so hard on yourself, and you won't let it happen again. And so, I mean, I think it is like how what leadership does, and then how the employee responds, to mistakes. Are they going to continue be a repeat or what is it? A repeat
Repeat offense. Yeah. offender,
repeat offender.
as opposed to a
So,
repeat offender, which is something else entirely. So, and of course, for the folks who are, their own worst critic or their own worst enemy, right? That's obviously you have to manage that too, right? You don't want people to get in their own way. I have people will tell you I say this all the time, and I'm still waiting for a counter example. Every strength, and I literally mean every strength, becomes a weakness if it's taken too far. So someone who is hard on themselves, that's good to a point. Everything is good. Strengths are all good to a point until they're not, and then every strength becomes a problem in some way, shape, or form. So the I'm hard on myself. If you take that to the extreme, it becomes paralyzing. It becomes self-defeating. So now, barring the extreme, the idea that you have somebody who's got a mentality of I I correct my own missteps, right? I'm always looking for things I could be doing better. Again, even that, you can't don't always be looking, because you've always looked, then you completely forget how much you succeed, and that's not healthy either. So I presume then, even with the person who's always looking for, we'll get back to the other point in a second. When I'm always looking for success, someone says to you, I don't have to worry about you, or you tell your team now, hey, I don't have to worry about you because I always know that you're looking for this kind of thing. Now, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask, right? So how'd that go? What can we do better? Share with each other, right? So just because they're doing it doesn't mean you can just say completely hands off, disengage. They've got this, if I'm understanding you correctly.
yeah, I mean, I think for sure that extreme is a hard one. I mean, is to live in, and for as an employer, I think, it's negligent to assume people know, once they've made a mistake that they're never going to make that again, that not to check in, not to go back and inspect and that sort of thing.
And it's good from a sharing perspective too, right? Because hopefully, again, we've all been to the school of hard knocks, and we talked during the last episode. Go back and listen to it if you haven't already. We talked about what makes good learners better than others. We didn't talk about a lot of things that make good learners good. One of them, beyond what we talked about last time, is they reflect. They don't just learn from being trained. They learn from their own experiences, and they're looking for ways to improve, and they're constantly evaluating without being paralyzing. So good learners do that. Good learners also learn from the mistakes of others, so that they don't have to keep going to the same school of hard knocks, right? You're right. People could make the same mistake more than once. It happens. It's understandable to a point. Eventually you start to wonder, right? If someone keeps making the same mistake, you do start to question, are you not remembering how this happened last time? What's not quite landing with that particular individual in that particular situation, when you've seen it happen a couple of times, the team has seen it happen a couple of times? How come they're not catching on? So you do start to get worried after, if it's repeated. But good learners do somehow observe others doing something that they could improve upon, and mercifully, they don't have to make the same mistake for themselves. They figure it out from someone else's experience. Okay, so now wait. This whole thing started with, how do you build a culture of learning? We said, okay, maybe it's more about thinking about how one develops oneself. You mentioned your team is always looking for ways to improve, and that means you have to, what's the buzzword? You have to embrace failure, whatever we call that. But when you said, how do you build a culture of learning? That's the first thing that came to mind for me, was you have to be willing, not just for your individuals to make mistakes, but the organization as a whole. You have to be willing to, the flip side, you take risks, right? You expect that things may not go the way you planned. You try things, you learn quickly, right? So you don't throw good money after bad as an organization, but you're willing to accept that things aren't going to go the way that you expect them to go. And you not only accept it, you embrace it. Nancy, do your people on your team come to you with, I have a problem I need help with, here's my possible solutions? I think something has gone wrong. I need an assist here to kind of figure out how to troubleshoot this. Does your team come to you with those kinds of things proactively?
Yeah, I would say they do. I mean, I think people that first start with our organization that don't know me as well may be nervous to ask those questions. But I think over time, I mean, whether it's me or Kevin, our VP of sales, our team does a really good job of asking questions, asking other teammates, asking us like, hey, I need you to jump in so that they know to trust me. I mean, trust works both ways, that I'm going to help them and that I trust, it's a trust game at the end of
So,
the day.
well, which is a good sign, right? Because you can say that you foster this kind of environment where people are focusing on development, and therefore they're willing to make mistakes, and therefore you're embracing failure. But if people aren't openly asking for help or openly admitting that something has gone wrong, that that does start to beg some questions about, well, how comfortable are they really, and how comfortable is that environment? What kind of culture is it? If if you feel like you're embracing it and yet you're not seeing the kind of behavior from your team that would indicate that they are actually embracing it. Okay. So I guess we could just stop here and say we've answered the question. How do you build a culture of learning? You you embrace you embrace failure. And we could be done. We could wash our hands clean. Okay, but hold on a second. We've talked about how there's this constant cycle of people learning from experience all the time. Okay, so where does, it's kind of weird coming from a learning guy, where does formal training, where does like formal, like a learning event or a lunch and learn or time that is focused on development training, where does that all fit in? If everyone's learning it on the job, why do we need training at all? So Nancy, when do you use training? Training in the formal sense of, we're going to take some time here to, now again, we talked last time about, okay, it's not technically transferring knowledge, but okay, teaching them something or giving them an opportunity to learn a new skill or get better at a task. When why do you why do that at all if there's so much learning going on the job?
Yeah, so I make it really simple. I bring everybody in for an afternoon, tell them all they need to know, and they go.
Right.
Just kidding, just
Well,
kidding.
sounds like a fantastic use of their time,
It is. I
and
mean,
and yours too.
yes. I mean, yes. You as a leader, you really, I mean, time is your worst enemy, and uh,
Time is money, as they say.
yeah, if we're not out selling or not closing, that sort of thing. But I've learned, especially I'm a 3, I'm an achiever. Like if I'm behind a computer, I feel like I'm failing, And so, and several of my team members are the same way. But yeah, I think it's really important to, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, okay, so we can back up here. By the way, don't you love that this is a podcast where you're, I love that I'm asking all the questions. It's
I
fantastic.
do too. And I
I
just
love
made a
it. So
mistake. So I'm just your little case
the
study here.
the question the question we'll come, that's a different conversation entirely, Nancy. The question I asked was, so if people are so focused on their development so much of the time on the job, then why take a time out to do some kind of
Right.
formal thing that is not the thing you described, but some kind
Yeah,
of formal
no. I
time
mean, okay.
outside of
I'm now
the context
tracking
of
where
work.
I was going.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make the investment of bringing people out of the field and spending time with them and training. Quick pause to thank W3 Sales for sponsoring this episode. If you're looking for inspiration in food service, from the details that shape the space to the products that elevate the experience, W3 Sales' new online catalog is built just for that. Explore and shop anytime at w3salesonline.com. It's also, so we do several things. Like we'll bring somebody in, kind of do an orientation, formal training, but really that's not where we get into product training or sales training. It's just kind of a broad brush stroke. This is what we do. Okay, go practice. And then we bring them back in and give them more training. Okay, go out and practice. And so it's it is based on each individual because everybody coming into my company has come in at different past experiences. So it just depends on the employee, but that is something that we find very, very important. It's the best investment you can make. And also product training. If your factories are ever offering that, to send them to training, to get that hands-on experience. There's nothing better than an employee coming back and being like, oh my gosh, that was so awesome, because they're going to share that experience with everybody else and they're going to feel confident about it. So I think that product training, factory training, internal training, I mean, we spend every Friday morning, it's every single Friday morning, and whether it's like a sales topic, or a product knowledge, we think that it is definitely continual, but you do have to be intentional. You do have to have some type of formal training program.
So I'm going to ask sort of a devil's advocate, dumb kind of a dumb question. Why? If good learners are always observing their own behavior and adjusting and learning from their mistakes and improving, and you want them in the field as a salesperson or doing whatever their job is, they're doing it and they're learning on the go and they're really good at it. And you have a culture that truly embraces the idea that, hey, we're always learning. It's okay. So let's insist. And yet we've got to pull them out. We've got to make them go do this other thing away from their job. Why?
Yeah, I think
Why? Like, let's. Okay, I'm not saying that it isn't true, but why is that important? And let me ask it the other way. So why don't you just let them learn on the job? If it's so effective for in a solid culture with solid people, you got the right people on the bus. Why not just let them try it, learn, adjust? Try it, learn, adjust. Sounds effective to me because they're always in the field doing whatever they're doing. That sounds efficient to me. Why pull them away from that?
I think that there's a balance in that. Because we could spend all of our time in training and product training just because of all the products that we know. And while that's very valuable to learn, if you don't have the time to get out there and practice it in real time, I think that's where the real learning happens, is you hear this, you hear about the product, you can only understand it to a certain degree until you get it in front of the customers. But I think that, yes, I think there is that that ongoing training. If somebody's out in the field, if they're thriving and they're blowing it up, I'm not going to bring them back in for sales training with me. That's not a good use of my time, their
Yeah,
time.
or theirs.
Yeah.
Now here's the flip side of that too. You said, hey, if they're blowing it up, I presume you meant that in the good sense of they're blowing it up.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
what if they're blowing it up? Is that why we bring people in for training? Because there's a risk always that they're going to blow it up. Like something is going to go catastrophically wrong. Like, listen, there's no, in the food service industry, even though I understand food is very important to people, there are no life and death situations okay, maybe occasionally there are. That's actually, I lied. There are life and death situations in the food service industry. There's safety problem. All kinds of things can go wrong. So, but in general, most mistakes are recoverable, and yet there are some that are not. And losing business isn't something you want to do on a regular basis. So, okay, so some balance, right? We want people to do the bulk of their learning on the job, right? That we want them in the field, and we want them in a mentality where they're always learning, they're always improving. And coupled with that are these moments where we step aside, we arm them with some kind of skills or some kind of practice and say, okay, let's go try that. But then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it again. We're going to see that kind of this cycle of, I'm going to practice it, I'm going to reflect on it, I'm going to improve on it, I'm going to build up my skills. That seems to be that it probably varies by organization, it varies by individual, but in general, there's some back and forth between being in the field, doing your job and practicing your skills, along with some offline, meaning away from the field, offline practice, offline learning, offline training. Call that what you will, but it's not. But it's not with live ammunition where if something goes horribly wrong, it impacts the bottom line.
Yeah, I think that, honestly, in that instance where you're talking about blowing it up in a bad way. I mean, I
I
think
was just, it was, you used
no,
the phrase.
I
I
think
just,
that I think we have to consider the other side. I mean, honestly, I probably wouldn't bring them in out of the field. We would go to them and we would work with them in the territory and go through their day to day if it would benefit them, and then after we observe and can understand where they're having challenges, then, we can either, help, you know, pair them up with someone that let them see a good day of from one of our role models, a great, here's how to handle this. They handle these situations well. But I think a lot of training is like in the car, like those are the best moments. And I feel like ride alongs and sales managers have really lost an art in the world today because most people, a lot of salespeople are behind their desks now and because they have to
it,
be. But I mean, we've just lost that, hey, my manager's going to get in the car and ride with me.
what
And
happened to, what happened to the whole, like, apprenticeship? What happened to the whole, okay, what happened to it? I'm sure some people are listening are screaming like, no, there's apprenticeship all the time. In fact, kitchens have a pretty strong apprenticeship model, right? You start in this role, you do this, you do this. You're watching, you're observing the whole time, and you start to step up into new roles as you gain proficiency. But it starts with awareness of what the heck is going on, and you're learning through watching experts. And then when you take over, they don't just throw you to the wolves, right? There you take over, but you take over in certain situations and you're being observed. I don't know why that same model doesn't apply to, well, pretty much anything, but I mean sales in particular. We're not going to throw sales folks out into the world without arming them with some basic skills and practice, so we avoid the obvious blowups. And then as they're doing it, have they seen you do it? Have they seen others do it? Have you taught on, never mind the car ride there, how about the car ride back? So what did you see? How'd that work? Everything we're talking about here, all of these ideas sound really good in principle. And yet, as a learning professional, when I propose these kinds of things or run formal training, which I do both of, there is a pretty common objection, which is, but in order to do those things, I have to take them out of the field. Right? I have to. It costs time, and for sales, time is money. And in any environment, to take someone out for formal training or to guide them or coach them or whatever training activity we're talking about, all of those things take time. And so if you measure time as dollars, in particular dollars lost, if you have to pull someone out for training, then that's a very different mentality than looking at training and a developmental mindset as helping people do their job better, more efficiently, more effectively. Sure, you have to pull somebody out of the field for X number of hours. This is how much they sell per minute. You can do the metrics. So by pulling someone out of the field, it costs me X. Yes, and it gains you Y and Z and a whole bunch of other things. Not to mention some of the intangible stuff, like people feel more engaged, and you can look at the stats all over the place about how much more productive an engaged workforce is. So, if your employees value development opportunities, they in theory will give back to you in spades. So we're talking about a learning culture or developmental culture where failure is part of the picture. So you have to embrace learning from one's mistakes, and you have to have a mindset where training and learning and all these things we do, these are contributing to the bottom line by helping people do their job better, which it's an investment. So you spend the time to get them to do their job better. The time that they spent away, you make that back and more. And so the objection to it takes time to develop people, yeah, it takes time to develop people. What's the alternative? What's happening to your business and to your people if you're not developing them or they don't have a developmental mindset? To me, that the alternative is not particularly palatable. So we have to come up with ways of getting over that objection and figuring out what it really takes to create that environment where all of these things that we were talking about actually happen.
No, I think that is, I mean, a great place to land because I think that is like I think I mentioned it before, it is an investment and it's the best investment you can make. And I take a lot of people outside the industry. I hire a lot of new people and it's definitely the road less traveled because it is hard. I mean, you got to teach them everything. And but if I tell my team too, because they're being taken away if they have to help somebody. I'm like, hey, we're a team. What they do affects what you do. And in the big scheme of life and how we're structured. But
What's the phrase? Hire the person, teach the skills, right? You hire the mentality that the attitude that you can't teach. But if you have the right person who's engaged in the right way, they can pretty much learn anything, within reason. So yeah, that kind of, I'm looking for a certain approach. I'm looking for a certain just way of being in my people. I'll worry about the what that can be built over time, and they're going to make mistakes just like you did. We talked about that in the first one, right? In our first episode, in our first conversation. No matter, even if you bring in a semi, a moderately experienced person or even expert to some extent, there are things that they're still going to have to learn, and they won't know it right away, and that's okay. It's going to take time, no matter what. Making that investment tends to be worth it.
100. If I was like, I wish there was a react button that says 100 that everybody could hear and see. So I love this. I love training. I've learned a lot. I mean, in these past 2 podcasts myself. So thank you so much for imparting your wisdom. And I just find it something we can all challenge ourselves. So no one's, like you said, no one's perfect. We can all get better at this. And so don't like die of shame, people. And I'm speaking to the choir here. I'm like, oh man, I did this totally wrong. But we can just learn from, I think it's, again, just being humble enough to be like, I could always learn more and do better. So
That's where this starts, right? We said that's where it starts. It starts, being willing to accept the fact that it's taken you a while to get where you are, and there were a lot of mistakes on the way and a lot of learning opportunities. Yeah, it starts there. You accept it for yourself, and then you realize that, yep, the whole organization is going to behave that way, and that's all right. I am curious how many people are screaming from the rooftops or agreeing or disagreeing with things. I exist on LinkedIn, so if people are curious or people want to continue the conversation, I can be found. So I'm very much interested because of the way I think about training and learning, which is it isn't about imparting wisdom. Maybe I'll say something that resonates and triggers something in somebody. That's awesome. But it's about creating an opportunity to learn, which usually means it's a two-way conversation, just like this has been. So I definitely I'd be curious what people out there who are listening are thinking and what questions it raises and what challenges it raises. That would be a lot of fun too.
Okay, well, we're going to challenge our audience on that. So
There
we'll
you go.
put the questions out there. We're going to link Michael on his LinkedIn so you can find him and start the conversation. So, but before we end, I have to have your confession. I'm really excited about this.
Oh, right. Because I teased it last time. So when we first met, right, when Tracy introduced us, I think we were chatting, and I think did your dog make an appearance during?
Yes,
I think
and
the dog, yeah, the whole menagerie came out, and something you may have asked me, or I get the question all the time. So I own a dog. I'm on my now 3rd golden retriever. We have had one at a time for as long as I can remember, and people always ask. Usually, the first question is, "Oh, is it a rescue?" Which I think you may have actually asked the same question, and I'm always so ashamed of my answer, and so the confession relates to that. My golden retriever's name is Finn. Finn is I think the furthest thing from a rescue that he could be. It's the answer is so embarrassing because once I say no, he's not a rescue. He was from a breeder. Oh, did you get him from around here? No, I did not. So I'm in the Chicago area. Confession: Finn was bred in Hawaii, which people then give me a really funny look. You're like, you couldn't find a golden retriever. They're a pretty common breed. You couldn't find a golden retriever like closer somewhere, but somewhere between Chicago and Oahu. Like, what's the? Yeah, I don't. How much time do we have, Nancy? It really is. It's a one embarrassment after another. But the semi short version of the story is somewhere in there. My wife is kind of goo goo gaga and crazy. She's a real dog lover, and so she spends a lot of time, scrolling on social media through like videos and pictures of dogs. That started to include a breeder who she fell in love with. You're like, oh, a breeder in Hawaii? Like, nope, not a breeder in Hawaii. A breeder in California. Tried to get on their waiting list. Actually, this is like a book author now, so very popular, semi well known in the dog world, what have you. And she reaches out, tries to get on the waiting list for a dog. And at that point, that breeder said, no, in fact, the waiting list is so long, I'm not adding names. So my wife was semi, disappointed in this. Fast forward to after we lose our second golden. Shortly after that, we hear from this breeder saying, I know of some available dogs. Now, listen to the phrasing, not I have dogs available. I know of available dogs. So as we're contemplating this, which was a really good time because we just lost a dog. So this is like, okay, how do you get over that grief? You get another dog. It's always been our plan, at least. As we're negotiating this and saying, let's get on the waiting list, and we put a deposit down to hold our spot on the waiting list, somewhere in there we ask, where's the breeder? And so my wife works for an airline, so it's not as completely nuts as it sounds. But wait, it gets funnier as we go. That's when we discover, and the fact that the name of the breeder was Island Companions should have been a clue, but it wasn't. And so we're like, oh, okay, no problem. We'll go get, we'll fly. We'll go get the dog, and we'll bring it back. Oh wait, there's more. Anybody in the audience who has had the good fortune of being to Hawaii or is aware, they tend to be pretty restrictive about living things going on and off the island. As it turns out, there's only like one or two airlines that fly dogs in and out of Hawaii, and it's not the one that my wife works for. So what has now turned, you see this again, it's a comedy of errors. It really, like, you could have just rescued a golden from a local shelter. Like, this would have worked. And all of the, and I have to say, I am so appreciative of all the people who do that. It's just not how we go about this. So I appreciate everyone who does it, but we did the exact opposite. And so here we are, not only, never mind the whole flight benefits not quite working as well as we thought. Not only are we flying there and back, now we're connecting. So let me tell you, you are very popular when you are walking through the San Francisco airport holding a 8-week-old golden retriever puppy. You get a lot of goo goos, gagas, and cute looks, but they're also pretty cumbersome. Let me say, having now walked halfway around the San Francisco airport holding a 11-pound golden retriever puppy. Suffice it to say, now we have Finn back home, but it's just an embarrassing story. It really is, that there's so many other options out there, and that is how we ended up with the dog that we have now. I'm semi ashamed of the story and how it all came to be, but here we are. We have a lovely now 15-month-old golden in the house, who, yes, is from Hawaii.
That's amazing. He's a special dog. I mean, you've
I'm
been blessed with
special. He's
part of your
special.
story.
That's what they said, actually. Oh, he's special. Oh, yeah, he's special. All right. There's a lot going on there, but nonetheless, I appreciate everyone who does rescue, and we love it. And it just has never been something we've done. So, but the needle swung completely the other way. Never mind. How about a local breeder? Oh no, let's fly 9 hours and go.
Yeah,
And
I
go pick
think
up
you
a
should
dog.
just be like, I love Goldens so much. I went and
We
got one in
flew,
Hawaii.
we flew 9 hours to go get a golden.
There's no shame in
Sh-
that.
I, it's, yeah, but maybe that might be true, Nancy, but it's still an embarrassing story to tell. Like, for all of the, and I mean, we haven't even talked, like, somewhere there, like, how much do they pay for that dog? Like, okay, we're not going to even talk about that because somewhere in there was a flight involved. Like, so wait, like, just, have to let that part of the story go. Like, it is what it is. We love the dog, great dog, but how we got him is a pretty significant departure from the norm. So I admit it. We flew to Hawaii to get
It's out there.
It's out there.
You've let it go.
So when people reach out to me, you can ask about Finn also.
Awesome. Well, you'll have to send me a picture. So
There you go.
thank you so much. I just loved our conversations. And so I really appreciate you joining.
Appreciate it, and thank you for playing along. I got to ask all the questions this time.
I know,
So
I was in the hot seat.
turnabout's fair
So,
play.
all right. Well, thanks so much. And thanks, guys, for joining us. And if you haven't watched Michael's first episode, part 1, check it out. See you soon.
Thanks, Nancy.
For more inspiration, follow our social media at W3Sales. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You know, all the things. We would love to connect with you.